Howdy, y'all. You're tuning into Geaux Howdy, the Southern Sports Talk podcast with Jerry.
Get rid of Brian Kelly. He's not a good fit at LSU. This is exactly what we expected. Fools.
Cody.
He's efficiently good at not getting first downs.
And Kyle.
It was like any minute somebody was just going to rip the mask off and their Jimbo was going to pop out like, haha, here I am. Oh, and welcome back. We actually, for the first time in a long time, we got the whole crew here today. So very excited about that. And all three of us here, you get to hear our three lovely voices. But the sad reality is that now the college football season has officially come to a close. First historic season, 12-team playoff, was not really living up to the hype to start with, but boy, did it come to a very good finish to the end. The semifinals and the final was a great game. We see Ohio State paying off that $20 million investment and getting themselves a national championship, going over Notre Dame 34-23. And let me go ahead and introduce my co-host, and then we will get into breaking this down. So, Jerry, how you feeling this evening? Welcome in.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. I do appreciate the best wishes and prayers to the family. That drive to, oh heck, what part of Mississippi did I go to? It was like an hour and a half northeast of Jackson, Mississippi. Went through Cody's favorite town, and I-20 is garbage. I hate it. 240 plus miles of just straight interstate driving, the worst. But no, doing good. Happy to see that I did not put any money on Ohio State versus Notre Dame. And I do want to start with a question, if I may. What grade would you give this 12-team playoff?
B minus.
B minus, that
B
good?
minus. Yes.
Wow.
B minus. Points off for seeding questions and for the fact that the championship doesn't count towards your overall ranking. Conference championships, again, we wanted this 12-team playoff and we wanted conference championships at the same time. We as fans are wanting our cake and eating it too, wanting to eat it too. College football is trying to balance those things. I understand that you're going to have gaps somewhere, but at the end of the day, they had the right teams probably in there. Like, I don't think Bama... Are you trying to bait me into why Bama deserved to be in this playoff?
No,
is that what this is?
No, I just legitimately want to know, because there's been previous college football playoffs and even BCS where you'd be like, yes, this is without a doubt the best college football playoff. Like, I'll be a homer a little bit. I think the 2019 college football playoff was arguably one of the best college football playoffs that we've had in college football.
Yeah, major homer alert. That was absolutely not one of the best we've ever had. almost one of the worst we ever had, actually.
Well,
like Oklahoma getting destroyed like that.
No, if TV ratings say anything, this was the worst This was the worst viewed national championship game. I'm not trying to bait you into anything. It's just, since college football season is over, what grade would you give it? No gotcha moment.
B minus, because it is one of a kind too. Like, you have to imagine, what if LSU did have to play one extra game? Could they have ran in
19 season?
Yeah, because okay,
steamroll them.
Stomp your brakes for a second, because they had 3 one-score games that they almost lost. In fact, should have lost to Alabama. Like, actually got below. Refs were the 12th man for them that game. Texas was a miracle play, and Auburn was a miracle stop. Like, actually, all these teams were in a position to win the game against LSU.
What you're saying is that LSU had a fantastic schedule, and
I'm saying they were human. They were very much more human than people make them out to be. So if they had one more game, it might have changed it, right?
You're right. It could have changed it.
This college football playoff showed that it doesn't matter how many games you give the true champion. Like, Ohio State had to go through the ringer to make it there, and they did. They were the better team at the end of the day. They got a little change that they spent on this win.
A little bit.
They don't hate the game, or hate the player, hate the game, right?
I know. I'm not. Yeah. That they played within the rules. They did what they had to do, but unfortunately, because of the results that we see now, here comes pay to play. Here comes pay to win. Like,
Mhm.
and since there's no, and Belichick was on McAfee talking about this today. Yeah, at least in the NFL, you have a salary cap. Right now, there's nothing in college football to say how much do you spend, how much do you not spend. And he made a great point, and it kind of Saban piggybacked on this too in another interview he did. But when we go to this 12-team playoff, in the little jingle in the intro or whatever the theme song is, it says giving more teams a chance to shine, right? Because we're letting more teams in, we're giving more teams a chance to shine. But are we really doing that with the rules? Because how do you expect a team that has a $20 million roster not to win it all? But in the same breath, how do you expect these schools that were trying now to get into the playoff, but they've got a $3 million roster and now they're expected to go play a $20 million roster?
Yeah.
Are we really
No,
giving
you
them a
make you
chance
bring
to
up a valid
shine? Or are
point.
we just giving them a chance to, like, well, at least we did it, right? I guess I can sell it to the recruits of like, hey, we made the playoff. But also another point they made, which I thought was great, is for these smaller programs like your Boise States that do get to make the playoffs, you are fighting, and excuse my French, but you are fighting like hell right now trying to keep your guys because these bigger schools, those guys now have playoff experience. These bigger schools are sweeping in now and going, hey, what Boise State pay you? 500,000? Here's 2 million. Why don't you come play for Alabama next season? We'll get you in there.
And what's
I
your
mean,
salary cap there, Kyle? Like, where can it stop?
Yeah,
that's
I don't
the
know.
problem. There is
I
no
don't know.
stop.
So baseball recently had a big ordeal with the salary cap, right? The Dodgers are the highest paid roster by far, and they look like it, right? Like I
Yeah.
think this year had something like what was it, like 8 All-Stars or something like that? Something ridiculous. Like, and then of course Shohei Ohtani and Mookie Betts were both in the discussion for MVP.
Right.
You had 2 MVP candidates on the same team. I mean, at some point in the season, they both were, right? So the Dodgers just signed another All MLB player, and they're going to be something like $5 billion in deferred cap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Shohei is changing the game with that thing because now you're seeing
yeah,
that, since he did that, now you're seeing that more and more where these guys are like, I'll take $700 million for 10 years and you can pay me $7 million up front and then we'll talk about the rest of it down the road as long as I
yeah,
get it.
because in all practicality, as long as you're promising it over time and you can afford to put it out, and baseball is so well established that they have these funds to back it, the Dodgers especially being the richest program outside of maybe the Yankees, and they're going to be the 2 competitive teams now, probably for going on the next 5 years.
Yeah.
I think the NFL has the best way of managing stuff like that.
They
And
do,
like the Saints
probably.
are a fantastic example. It's like they're $56 million over the salary cap, and they have to get to zero before the start of the spring season?
Yeah,
I
but
don't
there's
know.
complications with that too. Like the NFL can play some pretty weird games with what's called incentives. They can do incentive pay. They can do deferred benefit based on like outcome. They can do all kinds of stuff to kind of play with that, and that's the only reason the Saints are able to sign new players is because they do that same thing. They're like, look, your contract is technically worth $15 million. The only amount you're going to get on your paycheck is worth $3 million. The rest of it is earned through incentives that are typically pretty easy to achieve.
But it's still
Yeah.
counting each year until either it's counting each year towards that annual salary cap until it's satisfied.
Yeah, to
So
me,
it's still a better situation than what MLB or college football is in now.
yeah, precisely. Like, and you can even look at the NBA. They have max outs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, you can't reset the market as like, for example, how every time a wide receiver gets a new contract, the next wide receiver, no matter how much better or worse he is than that receiver, has to get the newest deal. Like they have to get the top. That's how like the quarterback market got out of control. You're giving Kirk Cousins record-setting amounts of money. You're giving Deshaun Watson's deal to this day was highway, like we literally watched extortion and robbery take place, and we just had to sit back and be like, oh, I guess it's just going to happen, and the city of Cleveland is just going to have to eat this one. And so in a world where that happens and the NBA controls it through the max contracts, I think that's a good way to look at it too. They also have much smaller rosters, so it's easier to do that, and the players have a little bit more mobility in the NBA than I guess in other leagues. But I'll say that yes, there's, to answer your original question, for the first time this is being on paper, I was not dissatisfied with the way it happened. I want improvement. I hope they go for improvement. But given the situation they were given, they had to make some hard decisions. They made decisions. They stuck with it. And we got, at the end of the day, Ohio State had to beat so many good teams to get where they are. They proved that they deserved the championship, right? The one thing that I agree with you too, Jerry, is like, what do we do about these salary caps? And as SEC fans, we actually would be ridiculed by the rest of the college football world for even having this discussion, because it looks like we're butthurt about what happened. That we want control over it so we can regain control over the college football world. That's the narrative right now. Because these schools are richer. And that's one thing people forget, is that college has not always been college athletics. Like, these schools make money from other things too. Ohio State being one of those, it's a large state university in a state that is more populated than most southern states, for the exception of Texas and like Florida and maybe Georgia, right? So when people are like, do you remember that Duke has like most of their people go on to be doctors and lawyers? Like, the majority of their graduates go on to be very high earners. What about SMU? Majority of their graduates go on to be very, very high earners. And some people say that's why this happened. I don't think that's why this happened. I think the ACC is just dog crap. And I think a lot of people are using them as like a very misplaced example. But there are some schools we need to start keeping our eyes on that are like big, big earner schools that are like, can Stanford get into this ball game?
No.
Why not?
I don't know.
Stanford's just Stanford.
I don't know.
Would you have said that about SMU a year before today?
Man, SMU is a weird outlier. I mean,
but why? Stanford definitely has more money than SMU.
Well, SMU is also the only program that was very successful before the death penalty, and has been the only school to get the death penalty, even though there's other schools that should have gotten it as well. I do agree that this is an arms race, and that it's essentially, things are going to get worse before they get better. Because look at Ohio State, look at Oregon, look at this last recruiting cycle with Michigan. It's literally a blank check. Go buy the best roster that you possibly can, and we're only going to see if it continues this way. It's going to be essentially what we saw with like the BCS and the 14 playoff. You're going to see the same teams. You're only going to see like essentially Ohio State, Oregon, Georgia probably up there, and maybe even Michigan. I don't know if Clemson's going to be able to hold on with their recruiting style, but unless it's wrangled in with like a salary cap, we're just going to see the same usual suspects.
So then you have to answer this though. If you do a salary cap, are you reducing teams' options by like, for example, Florida and Florida State and Miami love to recruit the state of Florida.
Yeah.
Obvious reasons, right? Are you creating culture clash when you're like, we can only have so many players? So these really good Florida players, some of them we're going to have to pass on because we just have to go for that Texas player. We have to go for that Ohio player. Or like,
you don't have to. It's honestly going to be no different than what recruiting was before the NIL. Because you already had a roster cap of the amount of players that you could have both on a team and in like a recruiting class or scholarship athletes per class.
Even to your point then, Jerry, how would you explain the Pony Express ever getting recruited? Like, you could never have that series of really talented recruits just ending up in a place at the same time.
I mean, you can, though.
You're right, Kyle. Now it's like just overt, right? Like, Kyle just did the money sign with his fingers. Yeah, now it's legal.
Now it's legal is the only difference. But
yeah, it's the same thing. Take your beloved 2019 LSU. Why, if I'm Jefferson, am I like, wait a second, I'm realizing I was a 3-star recruit coming in here for $100,000 a year. I'm way better than this Chase guy. Why can't I get the money he's getting? Oh, we've already hit our salary cap. Sorry. Bye. I'm going to go somewhere where they don't have a maxed out receiver. I'm going to go get that.
That's 100% correct.
And
like,
that's why
it's the same thing like the scholarship limits.
I think that's why you're seeing, like Belichick hired Michael Lombardi to be the general manager of football at college level. We're not talking pro team. We're talking a college program
Mhm.
now has a general manager because of all this stuff, right? And it's the same thing that Andrew Luck is now doing for Stanford. That's why when y'all were, adding Stanford in the mix, I was like, hang on, they just brought in Andrew Luck, who knows a thing or two about football, right? He
Right.
just said, hey, man, I'm tired of getting beat up behind this terrible offensive line in Indianapolis, so I'm going
See-
home. I'm not
Yeah,
doing
he
this
paid a
anymore.
lot of money for that brain he has, probably.
Yeah, he
and so
did.
he doesn't want to get CTE that easy.
Right. He's a very, very bright individual. And you take somebody who obviously loved Stanford, spent a lot of time there. And I think in Michael Lombardi, I've heard him do some interviews where, he even said today that he's like, they're hot on the recruiting trail right now. We're going to these guys and some of these recruits are coming up to him and they're going, hey man, I've got a $4 million offer from Texas to go play for them. And Lombardi said, sometimes I'll look at those guys and go, that's a great deal. You should take that. Go ahead.
Right.
And he said, then they'll call him back a week later and go, well, it might be more like $1 million. And he's like, yeah. I mean, people are bluffing now. These recruits are now coming up to him. So I want this because I've got this from so and so. And I think you're gonna. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to change that quickly to where some of these teams go, okay, great, take your offer.
So-
Like we'll find some other guy.
So to kind of confirm what you said, with me keeping up with LSU recruiting, that's essentially what happened with two of their recruits that they were trying to get out of the high school level. You see Bryce Underwood, they had Bryce Underwood in their hands, and then Michigan just comes out and buys out of them. And I'm sure Bryce was like, "Hey, coaches at LSU, I just got this NIL deal that's worth $10 million. Do y'all want to try to counter this and keep me?" And they're like, "Sorry, we can't." And they just let him go. They still offered him a good chunk of money as far as an 18-year-old is concerned. But
That's wild.
Bryce Underwood's a great example. And then there was another one, I can't remember his name, but he eventually signed with Texas at the last minute because Texas came in and was like, "Hey, we see that LSU's offering you 1.2 million. We'll offer you 2 million to come sign with us." And that's what he did. You're going to have teams that are going to be like in that situation where they're just going to be like, "Sorry, we can't afford you then. Go, best of luck over there. If we play you, we hope you suck."
And maybe
Yeah.
the salary cap would be the answer too, because there's no rules right now. So you're Ryan Day, right? You guys are Ryan Day right now. You lost to Michigan. Everybody wanted you to leave. He had to hire an armed guard. There's reports to stay at his house because he was afraid he was getting threats, all this kind of stuff. Then he goes on and wins the national championship, right? Okay, great. You're talking about the day you get off the plane back in Columbus. You had just celebrated a national championship win with your team. There's already reports that teams are reaching out to Jeremiah Smith. We'll give you $4.5 million to get in the portal right now and come play for us. This is upsetting. You can't even enjoy the victory that you just had because now you're right back into, oh crap, I got to try to keep this team together now because people are coming in, they're making phone calls, they're sending
That's
texts. It's
exactly what happened to Ryan Williams.
Yeah.
Is at Alabama, premiered to. He's going to be the best receiver in all of college football, or maybe he's competing for it with Jeremiah Smith. But definitely in the SEC, he's the premier receiver, and now just suddenly is like, I don't want to play for the most prestigious program of the last 20 years. It's got to be all behind numbers too. What if they did something like, because this is how they controlled it in the back half of it. They gave scholarship limits, right? You could only give so many scholarships out for sports. Just turn scholarship into max contracts. Set a max and say, like, you can pay any amount of players, any amount under this number, but you can pay only 35 players between 250 and 5 million. 250,000 and 5 million.
I mean, it's essentially
That's
going to
not bad,
be
yep.
in some kind of like combination. That's going to really be the only way to fix it. But at the same time, I mean, can we really fault these boosters, coaches, what have you, anyone that's during the off season trying to make a business deal with these athletes? It's no different than schools calling coaches after their season is over saying, "Hey, we want to hire you away from this school." Like that's
It's just-
these aren't amateurs.
It doesn't
Sucks.
feel
As a
Yeah,
man
it
in the
doesn't-
game,
You're
it
right.
sucks.
It doesn't feel right.
Like in the NFL, it feels okay. It's fine to watch Lamar Jackson lose to Josh Allen because both teams have a salary cap. Like
right?
they have to manage their talent, pay their talent, all within the same ballpark. Watching Ohio State run over Notre Dame and being like, yeah, because that's $5 million looking down the barrel of an offensive line that's paid maybe $1 million combined. And
Right.
being like, what are they supposed to do? Because at the end of the day, money does translate to talent with these players. Like you saw it with Ohio State. They were the better team. And we'll get into the game in a second, the actual performance of it. But at so many levels, Ohio State never even panicked after that first drive. They were like, oh no, we are so much better than what you just put on the field. Like we'll let you empty the tank this one drive. And that's essentially.
I mean, I think that's a good way to segue into the game. I had to eat crow with the group that Kyle and I are in, the college pick'em group, because I think it was after halftime, just as soon as the clock hit quadruple zeros, I'm like, man, the under is a for sure win, and I had to eat crow. I also thought that what was it, the first drive taken 10 or 11 minutes off the clock. I'm thinking this is A&M Appalachian State all over again.
Oh
I
no.
Shut your
I thought
mouth.
it was gonna be
Shut your dirty mouth.
not trying to take shots, but I mean, what did Appalachian State do? They ran the clock down to where it was very lopsided. I thought that was what Notre Dame was going to do and keep this pretty dang close.
Yeah, I see what you're
Yeah.
saying, Jerry. But like, it looked to me like desperation. Like they were so desperate to score this drive, they were willing to empty all the cards in their hand.
I mean,
And
you
like,
have to though. With a team like Ohio State, you knew
no, you
that they
don't.
were going to be statistically.
Ohio State
and like last time, Ohio State had all the statistical advantages over Notre Dame. Notre Dame was going to have to pull some Fun Belt Conference related things to keep it close.
But to me, that's where I disagree. Is because if I'm an offensive coordinator, I'm thinking I have to give up one of these fourth downs and just kick the field goal because I have 15 runs out of my quarterback and I used 9 of them this one drive.
He did get beat up on that first drive.
I literally emptied the tank for 7 points. Whereas if I save these runs, it could turn into a busted coverage next drive where my quarterback's not winded, seeing stars, has the energy to maybe take off whenever they go man coverage, turn their backs to him. Instead, it was just all designed runs right into the teeth of this defense. And like that's a hard run for quarterbacks. I think Ohio State played them like a fiddle that first drive. I think they were like, yeah, you're going to score. It's like rope-a-dope, like for Muhammad Ali's old strategy, right? Yeah, back me into a corner. Go ahead. Wear yourself out. Just knock me out. Come on, hit me. Give me rib shots. And then as soon as you go to catch your breath, the arms come, the guard comes down, and they came back at them. And that's exactly what Ohio State did because they had nothing the next 3 drives. Nothing until Ohio State gave them life with that fumble.
I mean,
it
that
was
first drive, just to recap it, 18 plays, 75 yards, 9 minutes and 45 seconds came off the clock.
And I mean, statistically, the first drive is the one that usually like makes or breaks a game because it doesn't make or break a game because that's the one where the defense is able to be like, okay, this is what they're doing. Let's make the adjustments, and that's where you start seeing after that first drive teams getting their
it's the script. You're running the script, right? Notre Dame went off script after play 8. They were like, we have to score.
I say nobody scripts out 18 plays.
Yeah,
no, I mean it was impressive, regardless of how many trick plays or out of the playbook they had to go with it. 18 plays is impressive. What's not impressive is the punt, 1 play into first half, turnover on downs, and then your next touchdown is in the third quarter?
Yeah.
Well, the 7 minutes and 52 seconds in the third quarter.
That's Ohio State's defense enjoying a beat up offense. People forget this about football all the time. What position rotates the most in college football? Defensive line.
Yeah.
What position rotates the least in all of football?
Sadly, offensive line.
Offensive line. And you just ran your offensive line through a meat grinder for 7 points. Which, look, it sounds stupid saying it like that, but if you're thinking chess, this is where we leave it all on the field today. I need you guys good for a second half, a second attempt. Let's take these 3 points, get off the field, regroup. If Ohio State scores, whatever, we have the tempo. We'll come back and get on 10. They didn't. They got greedy. They were like, we need these 7 at the cost of everything. And they got the 7, and Ohio State just took them for all they're worth on the other side of the ball.
So, Kyle, I know I asked Cody what he gave college football playoff as a grade. I want to ask you this. Do you think there was a more deserving team than Notre Dame to go against Ohio State?
Oh, my God, if you say Alabama.
Oh no!
Who would say Alabama?
You don't know the cartwheels I turned in my house whenever I saw Alabama got left out of the playoffs. So
I want to see you actually do a cartwheel. I don't think you can do one.
it's not pretty.
I
get in a circle. I make the circle all the way around, but it looks like somebody broke their back in the process. A more That's a great question. A more deserving team. No, the only one I could even fathom to make somewhat of an argument would be, in my opinion, would be Oregon. That's the only one I can fathom an argument for.
Oh, was the question? Which one was? I thought it was.
I'm sorry. The question, just to clarify, the national championship matchup between Ohio State and Notre Dame, was that the legitimate best matchup, or do you think that there should have been a different team to be in place of Notre Dame?
And I mean, my argument is kind of mute whenever you look at what happened between Ohio State and Oregon, and could that have been the national championship game? Maybe. I don't know. But just looking at all the other teams, Penn State, Cody, you and I had a great back and forth about Penn State, we were doing the recaps of those games. But Penn State just felt like one of those teams that they weren't playing to win. They were just playing to hang on. They were just trying to survive, and you can't do that against a team like Ohio State. And to be fair, when you're talking about these 18-play drives, like Cody has a great point. You empty the clip, you're like, man, we got to score first. We got to set the tempo. It doesn't matter what it is. We got to make this happen, right? So you take your offensive line, you run them 18 plays of trying to push these guys around. And then I think that's why the next couple drives that you saw, they couldn't do anything because their offensive line was exhausted, even after going and getting, a break on the sideline, because I think Ohio State went down pretty quick and scored. And then they're like, all right, offense, let's go. And those guys are like, what? No, I'm not ready to go back out there. I need a break. So to divert, to get back to the original question, I mean, Oregon could be the only one I could make an argument for. Texas, to me, I've said 100 times in these last couple episodes, their defense was national championship ready, but to me, their offensive it wasn't there. Like, I think Ohio State would have held them to less than what Notre Dame got, if we're being honest.
I think the team that had the best shot at beating this Ohio State team wasn't even in the playoffs, and it's Miami. I think Miami was the most talented team that didn't produce enough to get in the playoff that had the best shot. They had the best quarterback to take on this team. They had the best receiver quarterback combo to take on this team. And they had the most consistent defense of the teams not included of teams. So, I don't think anyone in the playoffs could have beat Oregon 2 out of 3. Not Oregon. I'm sorry, Ohio State 2 out of 3. Not a chance. I think the way they were playing, they finally brought it together. That Michigan loss was the catalyst they needed to become the team they had to be. It was a reminder, hey, it's that moment in the Mulan, whenever she looks at the water and sees herself, whenever she's got her, her soldier outfit on, but she sees herself back home. Or I don't know if I'm misremembering that movie or something, but I feel like there's a moment like that somewhere in there.
Kill you if you got that wrong, because that's her favorite movie. So I hope you got
that
really.
I feel like there's a moment where she's singing that song, that really sad song about who she is inside, and she looks in the water and she sees either herself or something like that. That was their moment where they looked in and am I the run the ball 20 times a game team? I am not. I am this other team. I am this Chip Kelly offense, and they finally went back to it, and that's what helped them.
Can we see an Ohio State remake of Mulan? I think that'd be hilarious.
But yeah, I think the playoffs were fair. I think that Notre Dame earned their spot in the championship by playing through it, proving to everybody that on our side of the bracket we dominated. Ohio State got put in the back of the bus and still pushed their way through all the way to the front and got their win. I don't see. The only thing you could argue is Oregon seeding was difficult, but at the end of the day, you have to win them all anyway. You would have ran to Ohio State somewhere. So if you can't beat Ohio State now, you couldn't beat them later. You're not the best team. Ohio State clearly proved they are. Notre Dame maybe gets a little bit of a investigation, but only because they did well too. It was Penn State who lined up against them, who had the easiest path and still couldn't finish.
Correct.
I think this is the only good thing about the college football, the 12-team playoff this year, was that you eliminated those questions. It's like, yeah, the question of who are the 12 deserving teams in it, obviously you can question that all the way to the end of, or to the next football season with that. But as far as the gauntlet that the 12 teams had to play to get to the national championship,
Right.
because like you're Kyle, I think you're absolutely right. I think Oregon is the only other deserving team other than Notre Dame. But look what we saw in week 2 of the playoffs. We had Ohio State, Oregon. We actually had that matchup. And so it is kind of like one of those things where it or not negates, but it just kind of relieves us of these what if questions, as far as like, what if this other team, like what we saw with
Right.
the
What's
last BCS, like LSU, Alabama wasn't deserving in the national championship. What if LSU did play a different team in 2011? You know,
Oklahoma State?
yeah,
That's
exactly.
the team that they argued should have been in there. But what if LSU had to meet Alabama again in a 12-team playoff? Would it have been different? What if they had to meet Auburn again? What if they had, or no, 2019. In 2019, they had to play Alabama twice. Do they win twice?
I mean, I think Ohio State, Oregon is the perfect example of that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oregon beats them early in the year, and then it's like, oh, hey, by the way, you got to play them again. And it's not for the national championship like you probably thought it was going to be. Like you probably thought, all right, we're going to work our way, national championship. Here we go. No. You're playing them in the quarterfinals, and they absolutely ran through you.
So that reminds me of Florida versus Florida State in 1996. Florida gets beat by them on a last quarter effort by Florida State. They're like, hey, national title, we decided is going to be the Orange Bowl, and it's going to be a rematch between Florida and Florida State. We just think you two are the best to do it. This is back, of course, when press was the biggest decider of who the national title game went to. And so they get to go to the title game. Florida comes back and destroys them. It's a fun thing to watch in college football, honestly, to see teams go with the back and forth. But
speaking of ACC, if I can shift the conversation, have y'all heard what the ACC commissioner is trying to propose for the conference next year?
No.
So it's Matt Moscona with ESPN Baton Rouge was talking about it, I think, on his Monday radio show, and said it perfectly. The conference is trying to figure out how to have the best chance of getting the most of their teams in the playoffs. And so there's essentially like two things that they're trying to propose. Either option one, the regular season best team in the ACC just sits it out, and the ACC championship game then becomes a number 2 seed versus number 3 seed. Or the second option, which is the most ridiculous one, is have the four highest rated ACC teams. They essentially get rid of that last week rivalry game. So Florida, or Cody, in your situation, Florida State wouldn't happen. Georgia Tech wouldn't happen. Clemson, South Carolina wouldn't happen. They would just erase that rivalry week, do number 1 versus number 4, number 2 versus number 3, and then on the championship day, have the winners of those two games play each other. And it's absolutely ridiculous to think that any of those scenarios.
I don't see how that fixes their situation.
It doesn't. The only thing that would fix their situation, and
in fact, the out-of-conference games would give their teams legitimacy at all. Like the fact that Miami beat Florida was a big deal for them going forward in the season.
But he brought up something, because for me, I grew up, and y'all are in the same boat as me. We grew up essentially only knowing our conference having a conference championship game. The first conference championship game was created by the former SEC commissioner back in 1992. there were hundreds of years of football. I say hundreds, excuse me. There was essentially 100 years of football that occurred without a national or without a conference championship. And so ACC commissioners basically telling the world, hey, we're trying to have this money grab and make the most ridiculous scenario to try to not only keep our revenue, which is ultimately going to go down with these stupid scenarios, but they're also giving a big middle finger to not only the teams that are there, but everyone else in the nation. Because think about it, if you have these schedules, like say you're Georgia Tech, and you have to schedule Georgia essentially at the end of the year every year,
Right.
but then what if you do have this magical run where you are one of the top 4 teams in your conference? You just have to say deuces, pay them millions of dollars to cancel that game, and then play this. Or do you just go into the season assuming you're going to be the top 4, but then you have this gap in your schedule if you don't become the top 4, and then you're just out of luck being one weaker game than everyone else in the nation? I think it's ridiculous. If they're saying that they need to have conference championships, then the playoffs need to count the conference championships a little bit more.
Well, I can tell you this. Right now, I would be gun shy to get rid of a conference championship overall just because of the way the Big 12 endured it in the past. Like, Notre Dame has a special place for it because they don't play cupcake games. Well, they do play like lower tiered Division 1 teams, right? FBS schools, but they don't normally play FCS schools almost at all. Like, they are going to play somebody's conference powerhouse at some point. Like, yeah, it might be the Mountain West number 3, but it's definitely not North Dakota Valley State, right?
I mean, they did play Northern Illinois.
Yeah, but Northern Illinois is an FBS school.
I mean,
it's still an
barely.
FBS school. That doesn't. That's the whole thing. Is like they still don't do FCS. Like the SEC. How many FCS schools did Ole Miss play this year before they played an SEC team?
I think 3.
Yeah, they played 3
Felt
warm up games for sure. Yeah, it felt like I don't think they started conference play till October, but you can't. The Big 12 got punished year after year for not having a conference champion. They had to declare a champion or a tie between champions, and they're like, well, you're not getting a national title appearance with that because the SEC is sending some 2 powerhouses to play for it, and so we're going to pick the winner of that game. And then they're like, well, what about, why can't we be the runner-up? It's like, well, the Big Ten's doing the same thing. Like,
I mean,
so,
I think the only way to fix the college football playoff is to make it the FCS. But Kyle, you've been
no,
like,
the FCS system is actually dog crap too.
No, you're dog crap. Anyway, Kyle.
FCS system.
Cody's in timeout for 5 minutes. No, mute him.
FCS
Kyle.
is actually worse than the FBS system. Said it. Done.
Hey, Mr. Podcast Commissioner here. Why is there no mute for him? Or can I can't mute him myself.
Because he knows the truth.
Oh my goodness.
Anywho, the free speech thing. Yeah, I'm not censorship on this program.
Oh Lord. Anyway, what do you think, Kyle? Keep conference or no? Conference championships or no?
I've made this argument a couple times in multiple different group chats, and probably even on this show once or twice about if you do away with conference championships, then why do we even have conferences? Like, to me, and as somebody who is a realistic Texas A&M fan, I'm not Natty or bust. Okay, I'm a realistic Aggie, and I've always told people if A&M wants to get over the hump, our first target should be conference championships and not national championships. Let's prove that we can consistently win this conference over and over and over again, and then we'll go talk about getting to the national championship. Now, obviously, the playoff system and more teams getting in has kind of shifted the focus on that, like y'all are saying. But at the same time, if we take away conference championship games or take away the significance of the conference champion getting in, I just don't see why at that point, why you don't have somebody like an Alabama go, well, if the conference championship doesn't matter, then why am I even going and playing LSU? Or why am I going and playing Ole Miss? I'll just go play, North Dakota. Well, that's a bad example because they're really good. I'll go play Furman 6 times, and I'll go play UMass twice. And, like it just seems like the thing that has created college football, the love and the passion that we have for it, which is these familiar rivalry games, your Ole Miss LSU's, your A&M Texas now that they're playing again, but your A&M LSU, because that kind of took its own little turn there for a little while. That's what we grew up loving. That's what we circled those games on our calendar no matter what. Other than the time I scheduled a wedding during one, but again, I'm going to shut up on that one. So
Arguably one of the biggest Alabama LSU games
I
ever.
know. Talk to my wife on that one. Okay?
It is the biggest LSU Alabama game ever.
But
Oh,
if we do away with this stuff, then you're gonna see, I don't know. I just feel like if you do away with conference champions, then the thing that we grew up loving and wanting to see we wanted to see the Alabama Georgia in the conference championship game. We wanted to see the LSU versus Alabama in the conference championship game, or whoever it was going to be. Before the divisions were still there. But now since there's no divisions anymore. To me, I will fight tooth and nail. I'll scream it till I'm blue in the face. If you take away conference championships, I think you start to see the death of college football as a whole.
Oh, I 100% agree. It becomes so like transparent. Like you always know, especially growing up, you start learning as it goes along. It's not been because you're a fan of the pageantry as a child, right? You love watching the colors, the teams, the fans. You love screaming with your family when something good happens and hating it with them. Those moments are special and prideful to you. And the veil is lifted as you get older and you learn it's all about money, right? At the end of the day, you start trying to strive to find the passion in it. Taking away conferences throws the veil in the trash. It's literally like just a casino at this point. Like you're here to give us money. That's what you're for, fans. You're not here to enjoy something. Give me money me now. Like
money me now. Yeah. Thank you, Charlie Day.
So that's pretty much. I agree, Kyle. Like it's dead. Like I honestly think right now, like college football would have easily been my favorite sport as a kid. The NFL has taken its place, mostly because it keeps parity in.
Yeah, you get the same. Essentially, you get the same matchups over and over, right? You got your Bills and your Chiefs that are continuing to play every year. But before we jump down that rabbit hole, you're talking about pageantry. Take what. And ESPN did a great job with this year, and I'm so glad they did it. But take the broadcasts that ESPN put on for the first A&M Texas game in 13 years. Like they had the intro, and the commentators did not say a word, and you could hear, A&M. You could hear them belting out the war hymn, and then you saw the swing, and you saw the guys running out, and all the pyro and fireworks. That's what we fell in love with. And that's why I've got goosebumps on my arm right now just talking about it. That's what we love. We love those hard hitting, tough matchups. I'm sorry, I don't want to watch A&M play UTSA and Stephen F. Austin and all that, or McNeese. Like we went to the McNeese game this year. We left at halftime. We didn't care about that game.
I mean, it
was hot as hell too, but yeah, we did. But it was 50-0. So I mean,
they're probably still willing to test that though. They're willing, like, if it comes down to, like, hey, this is just about money, let's see what they'll tolerate. Like, video game companies already do that to us. Like, they'll definitely be like, hey, we're going to, like, take 90% of the features so we can pay our developers less and still make you pay full price for this game, and then you can buy those other features and microtransactions. We still buy the video games. At the end of the day, if they tell you, hey, Texas A&M is playing 18 high school games for the next 3 years, you just have to live with it. I have a hard time believing the stadium doesn't fill up.
Well, the stadium at A&M is always going to fill up. That's a bad example. But
right, isn't?
But the point remains, though. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say it's a bad example. The point that you're making is that say we go out and schedule those 18 high school teams, right? And then we can at least go to the playoff selection committee at that point and go, well, we're undefeated. We haven't lost a game. So why can't we get in? Oh, well, you played a bunch of... so the conference does matter and the conference championships do matter. Okay, all right. It's just...
Or you didn't make us any money by TV ratings. Like, you didn't schedule USC. You didn't schedule Notre Dame. Like...
That is the problem right there. We saw the problem with the Florida State. Oh, your starting quarterback got injured. That's not going to be good TV. You're not going to be in the playoffs. And how it would be...
I think Georgia kind of proved that this year.
I mean, but let's be honest. Did Georgia even have a quarterback this year? No, he didn't.
He had 3 games where he threw for over 400 yards, man.
If he was an actual quarterback, he would go to the draft and not transfer to Miami.
Who did better this year? Him or Nussmeier?
Nussmeier.
No.
Yes.
Go check those
Anywho,
stats.
so before I
Stat
decide to saw off my ankle, I had one good heartfelt story here for y'all. So everyone, I'm sure, remembers the one-of-one Paul Skeens rookie card, right? And that amazing deal that the Pittsburgh Pirates had for whoever could find it.
No.
Kyle?
I remember. I don't remember the exact details, but I do remember this coming.
The
up.
Pittsburgh Pirates are an obscurity of MLB as it is.
I mean, but they drafted the hottest rookie of the
The big
last
gas
draft.
station.
Yeah.
And they threw
That's his nickname. That's his
I
nickname.
thought you meant the city of Pittsburgh. I'm like, imagine being called like the whole city is 1-7-11. That's how it is.
I mean,
Oh,
well, I'm
man.
not. Nope. I'm gonna stay away from that. Go ahead.
There you go. Anywho, so the Topps, the trading card company, had a one-of-one rookie autographed Paul Skeens card, and the Pittsburgh Pirates like, if anyone finds this, we'll give you 2 seats behind home plate season tickets for the next 20 or 30 years. You get this, that. Livy Dunn, Paul Skeens' beautiful girlfriend's like, oh yeah, and you could even be in my suite with me, and this, well, all this kind of stuff. And you had grown men all across the country doing whatever they could to try to find this card.
Oh yeah, you put
No,
Livy
it was-
Dunn in there, you'll definitely get some guys.
Right.
I would have been popping some packs if I had known that.
Right? So guess who finds the card? And I didn't actually know this information until I just pulled it up. A 11-year-old kid who begged his parents for a box of 2024 Topps Chrome cards for Christmas. On Christmas Day event, like supposedly just pops it open, gets the one-of-one Christmas Day in front of his parents, wrote a heartfelt letter, I don't know to who, but rather than taking the Pittsburgh Pirates on their deal or selling it to a private investor for millions of dollars, they're supposedly auctioning it off for charity. So good.
How much did it make?
Oh, it hasn't. I mean, they just found it, I think, yesterday. So it's still a very hot topic right now. And I'm sorry. Obviously, they found it during Christmas, but it was announced that it was found like this week.
Oh.
So they're trying to figure out where it's going to go and all that kind of stuff to be auctioned off. But this was an article for MLB.com as of 56 minutes ago on Friday, January 24th. So, I mean, it's still pretty dang fresh.
They're estimating up to $1 million. That's pretty good.
Oh, it'll be much more than $1 million.
That's what this auction site's saying. They think $1 million is
Yeah.
going to be the sell price.
I mean,
So let's see if it beats what the One Ring from Magic the Gathering's one-of-one sold for, which was $2.5 million to Post Malone. So Post Malone bought the one-of-one ring from Magic the Gathering. Let's see if Paul Skeens can beat that.
I think you can.
I don't know. It's the one ring, man, to rule them all.
Wow.
But this is the one rookie.
The one rookie that could potentially, Hall of Fame career, and well, let's not jump the gun, but definitely worth a lot. I mean, dude is amazing. Let's just throw that out there.
He's a stud.
Well, guys, here comes the fun part of running a weekly podcast show, or whatever we decide to move forward. Is now our main topic that we did this for. The main reason we got into this is over with. So, to give our fans
a downer.
I know, but I say that to say this. To give our fans an idea, we're not just going to stop the podcast now. We're too invested in this. I think we're getting really close to 50 episodes now, which is kind of impressive, honestly.
Benny Burger.
Yeah, I mean, that we've gotten together 50 times to do this. But, we're going to start to transition into basketball. SEC definitely is not a basketball conference. The basketball play has gotten significantly better over the last couple of seasons.
You seen the rankings recently?
I know, but when you say who's the best basketball conference out there, they don't go, the SEC. There's others that probably go before that, but we're getting there. We're getting to that point. And then, of course, as the spring is starting to get underway, my favorite sport in the entire world, baseball, is starting to get underway, and now the SEC is a baseball conference. So
loaded.
I think we'll have a lot to talk about when it comes to that. But we're gonna go back to the think tank, and we're gonna have to brainstorm some ideas of things to bring up going forward. However, we are gonna start to transition into basketball. So, all our listeners out there that are avid basketball fans, I do have a guest coming on. He was or somebody that could potentially come on that has been a long time basketball coach. Dude breaks down basketball games like nobody, like Rain Man. So he can bring up all kinds of different points that you as a normal basketball fan probably wouldn't think of just watching the game. So a lot of fun. Looking forward to that. And we're getting into it. Florida's doing great. A&M's doing great. LSU is
Auburn, number one in the
playing.
country.
Auburn, Tennessee, Alabama.
Alabama.
I mean,
Kentucky's number 9 too.
Kentucky, Arkansas.
I think the biggest
now.
surprise is Arkansas sucking with Calipari.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did not see
Yeah.
that. Definitely thought
A&M and State are doing awesome too this year. Ole Miss is ranked. How that happened, I'm still. Hopefully, he can explain that to us because that's got me flabbergasted. Memphis
right.
rounding out the bottom 25-ish area.
Right.
Man, the SEC it's here for basketball.
It's here to stay.
I
Hopefully.
think so, man. I think so. Duke is looking super good this year. Cooper Flag looking like the real deal. So that's going to be an interesting thing going forward. But also Michigan State trucking along, just doing their thing for represent the Big Ten. Houston and that stupid style of play. Like I've watched one Houston game this year, and I could only stand. I say watch the game. I watched 5 minutes of it, and I was like, "This is suffocating." Like the whole defense, choke defense, and then like pass around offense is just crushing to me.
Wow. Then
Anyway, I'm excited about basketball.
You may not want to tune into many A&M basketball games because it'll make you run your head into the wall how they can shut down on defense, but yet offensively we can't figure it out some days. It's like
everybody wants to be the next Virginia, and like it, I don't know.
When your offenses get to the basket in any way possible, but yet you're going up against 2 or 3 7'4" guys who are consistently blocking your shot over and over and over. It's just I want to run my head into a wall sometimes, but that's the life of a true fan. Gentlemen, I think we did this college football season well. Did some justice to it. I definitely have enjoyed doing this with you guys over the course of the season. This has been a lot of fun. Definitely looking forward to continuing the coverage of college football through the off season, the transfer portal, the recruiting. It's going to be a lot of fun. But for the next time we see you guys, our main topic will be basketball, and we'll have a lot of information to dive into when it comes to that. So for Jerry, for Cody, and for myself, we will look forward to seeing you guys next week with a lot of basketball talk. So long.